Hello and welcome to Gladys Cake Kitchen. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this pretty ganache cake decorated with flowers, gold leaf and some macarons. I'll also be taking you through some raw moments of the decorating process, showing you how I fixed the slant in this cake, an unprecedented moment of misadventure and some decorating changes that occurred before settling on this final design. For added value, I'm going to be discussing the subject of feeling overwhelmed during the cake making process, what that looks like for me, and how to handle such moments for your best cake decorating results. This video is packed with tips not just for cake decorating but for your own well-being when making and decorating cakes. So without having to waste your time, let's jump right in. On my work table is a cake board over which ganache is applied and a cake card placed. Ganache is again applied over the cake card before the first layer of cake is pressed into place. The cake is to be filled with buttercream using an ice cream scoop and an offset spatula for spreading the buttercream. The second layer of cake is added and the filling process continues. When the third layer of cake is placed, a scraper is used to polish off any buttercream edging out from inside the cake layers. Notice at this stage the cake is leaning slightly and looks slightly slanted. The layers are shifted into place and the filling is completed when the fourth layer of cake is put in place. The cake layers are observed for alignment at eye level and shifted into place in case of misalignment. On close observation though, you'll find the layers are not properly aligned, a small detail that I missed, and this will cause the basis of a decorating mistake later. The cake is left to chill before it is returned to be trimmed. Trimming helps to even out the cake layers for an even surface, making for a clean slice when the cake is cut into. There's more reasons why I trim my cakes in a video linked up here for you, so please do check that out. Trimming is done, but there's a slight lean in the cake noticeable at an angle. So it seems like the slant in the cake is so subtle that it feels like perhaps I'm the only person who can see it. But I promise you, as the decorating process develops, you'll get to see more of it, and you'll also see how I fixed the slant in this cake. Having said that, I realize I have a lot more information in hindsight because I was able to observe things better and identify where the problem occurred during the editing process. Whilst I was decorating the cake, I was left scratching my head wondering where this must have happened, because I thought I had employed every measure to get this cake right from the start. Clearly, I missed the critical step of identifying the slant from the beginning. So I got to see that better when I was editing the video. But during the decorating process, I clearly missed this, which would develop into a critical problem during the decorating process. It goes to show, despite one's best skills, cake decorating can have unpredictable moments. But the good news is that with the best skill, some knowledge and a lot of patience, most cake decorating issues can be fixed for better result. So I'm going to go crumb coat this cake, and I'm sure I'll be back talking to you again. Back to cakes. The cake is to be crumb coated, which is crucial for cakes that have been trimmed, creating lots of crumbs. A layer of ganache or buttercream is applied at this stage to seal in all the crumbs, leading to a polished cake when subsequent layers of ganache or buttercream is added later. With a layer of ganache applied, a scraper is employed to clean off any excess ganache, and I notice a tilt in the scraper when it is moving around the cake. After scraping though, I notice the cake isn't straight standing, with an obvious slant now clearly showing. To fix the slant, I first attempt to fill the cake with heavy layers of ganache to build the upper side of the cake up before any excess is scraped clean. Having tried this though, I realized the slant remained at an angle. This is because the slant is caused by a structural issue, and for this specific cake, it appears one of the bottom cake layers had slightly shifted out of place or wasn't placed properly during the filling and layering stage, causing an angle to be formed. Well, the method I employed to fix the cake admittedly didn't work, and that is because, as explained earlier, for this method to be effective, I almost have to take the entire cake apart and reset it, trimming away on the side that was creating the problem, and build the cake back up with layers of ganache. Obviously, I didn't have time to do that. I also even tried a second method where I tried to reset the cake by shifting it into shape, but it broke the cake, creating a crack in it. So I'm probably going to have to cut my losses and try another method, which is the double cake drum method. Without a sure reason why the slant had happened, I decided to get back to basics. To do this, the cake was removed from the surface board and the cake card underneath removed. The ganache is then cleared from the surface board using a sharp knife, and a clean layer of ganache is now applied evenly. The cake drum now replaces the cake card, and a dollop of ganache is applied on the drum before the cake is moved back into place. The cake drum will now serve as the base for fixing the slant using the double cake drum method, which is similar to using ganache discs. But first, the ganache is applied to finish the crumb coating phase of the decorating process, and the cake left to chill before more layers are added later. When the cake is returned, another cake drum is placed on top before more layers of ganache is applied. The start of fixing the slant begins here when layers of ganache applied is scraped clean. The surface is filled with more ganache to even it out, and any excess cleaned for a polished look. This method of fixing the slant for a straight standing cake will also assist with sharp edges. A detailed tutorial to the double card method is linked up here for you, so please do check that out. The slant is fixed, resulting in a straight standing cake, which is to be chilled for 15 to 20 minutes. The cake is returned for the drum to be removed using a knife dipped in hot water. The top of the cake is polished off by first using a knife to rid of any excess ganache, and the top filled with a layer of ganache. A scraper is used to gather the ganache on the top leaf by scraping around the cake, and the cake left to chill again. The cake is brought back for the excess ganache gathered on the top lip to be trimmed off for a sharp, clean edge, and a scraper employed to finish polishing the cake. And that's our cake done, or so I thought before the cake nearly fell off. That was a save, and I now have an unprecedented cake fix thanks to my own misadventure, but I'm grateful the near miss only caused slight dents on the cake thanks to the use of ganache. The cake is set back into place, scraped clean around and on top. The dents are filled in with ganache, and after scraping around the cake one final time, a knife is used to remove any excess ganache from the top of the cake. The cake is done now and transferred onto a fondant covered cake board ready for decorations. For decorations, gold leaf is applied, dabbing it into place with a fluffy brush before my first attempt at placing the decorative element. The inspiration for this cake is on screen, and the customer understands the final cake is an adaptation and not an exact cake. After placing the flowers, swirls of buttercream, some macaroons and sprinkles, the design didn't seem right and the cake looked rather unpolished. So I decided to take the elements off and reset them slightly. This decision I will find had more to do with feeling tired and overwhelmed. So I can rely on technique and confidence to fix my cake decorating problems, but what happens when I'm feeling overwhelmed on a busy cake decorating day? For context, on the day of making this cake, it was one of those summer days where there was a heat wave and I also had a lot to do. And after about nearly 48 hours of continuously decorating different types of cake, at this point I was really exhausted and overwhelmed. One of the things I tend to notice very quickly to identify whether I'm just feeling slightly exhausted or feeling really overwhelmed is when my working environment becomes really messy. I know cake decorating is a messy business, but for me, I am able to keep organized as I go along. But when I begin to feel as though I've lost control of my work environment with mess everywhere when I can't do anything about it, I begin to panic and feel like, oh my God, how am I going to get through all of this? And frankly, some difficult days of overwhelm has left me crying for no reason, except for the fact that I struggle to focus on how I am going to get through some of the smallest tedious tasks to complete a particular cake. Normally, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, the first thing I'll do then is to stop and walk away from whatever I am doing, including my work environment. Sometimes the temptation is to stay and power through and get it done. There is a time and a moment for that, but when I'm feeling genuinely overwhelmed where I feel like I can't get through my tasks, I'm able to walk away from my workspace, of course keeping the cake safe. After that, normally I would call a friend. It doesn't have to be a cake maker friend or someone who understands the business of cake making. Just a regular supportive friend who understands how difficult my job is and also how hard I work and how overwhelmed I feel is all one needs. In many cases, I've been able to count on a friend who has probably just made me laugh out loud in the moment and shifted my attention from the stress of the moment while still validating the difficulties that I am feeling. When I am not able to reach a friend, sometimes I've counted on cake groups where I will go and probably just tell them what I'm going through and will receive some supportive advice or recommendations from some of the colleagues and acquaintances on there. Caking groups are some of the most helpful and supportive groups you will ever find to get some help from. So maybe that's something to consider if you do not have a supportive, strong network around you to count on difficult days through your cake decorating. For me though, on this particular day, I didn't seem to want to go onto a caking group, and my friend was not available for a chit chat about my cake decorating problems. So what I did was take a break, made myself a cup of tea, sat on the sofa, mindlessly scrolling through Twitter whilst looking for some Harry and Meghan news. Quite a toxic but helpful thing I needed for the moment. And after that, put on a podcast, managed to clean my work environment and reset myself back into a place where I felt like I had mental clarity and reset and was able to focus back on the task. And that's how I deal with my overwhelm. Hopefully you have some friends, caking groups, or some other means where you're able to kind of sit down, listen to some music, walk away, take a moment, validate yourself whilst also enjoying the art of making cakes, because that's exciting. But we still have a cake to finish, so let's go get the cake done, and I'll see you soon. Back to my work table, I reapplied some buttercream swirls and macaroons at the bottom of the cake. For the flowers, I resorted to my usual technique of pinning them into a fondant ball placed in the center, and any gaps were filled with leaves. A swirl of buttercream on the top side was applied to hold the macaroons in place, which replaced the bigger sloppy swirls from earlier. Some sprinkles were added too. Our cake is done now, and far from the troubles of making it, we have a polished ganache cake adorned with gold leaf, macarons, and a selection of flowers and sugar sprinkles. The customer had this to say: "Gladys, this is absolutely amazing. It's stunning." And for good reason, I agree, even if I say so myself. The video on screen will hand you more tips on how to fix your cake with leaking jam. But for more cake fixes, check on the links below. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.